New York City, spring of 2005. In a working-class neighborhood just a subway ride from Manhattan's bustling heart, the life of a 6-year-old girl would be cut short on what should have been an ordinary walk home from school. The case shocked the city, raised urgent questions about bullying and youth violence, and left an entire community grieving. On Twisted Case File, we examine the story of how a child's life was taken, how investigators pieced the case together, and what it revealed about the dangers children face even in familiar places. Don't forget to like, share with friends, and also subscribe. It was here, on a short walk home from PS 118, that 6-year-old Emily Rivera, a first grader known for her shy smile and love of drawing, disappeared. Emily's routine was simple. Each afternoon, she would walk 3 blocks from the school building to her grandmother's apartment, where her mother worked late shifts at a local clinic. She had done this walk dozens of times before. She was a sweet kid, always polite. We never thought something like this could happen here. Teachers had noted Marcus's aggressive behavior. There had been shoving incidents on the playground and harsh words exchanged in the lunchroom. But like many cases of childhood bullying in the early 2000s, the pattern was often minimized as, quote, kids being kids. In 2005, anti-bullying policies were just gaining traction. Schools lacked clear guidelines, and many staff were not trained to see early aggression as a warning sign. On the day of the crime, Tuesday, May 17, 2005, Emily attended her usual classes, had lunch with her friend Sarah, and at 2:45 p.m. was dismissed. She waved goodbye to her teacher and started her short walk. Marcus was also dismissed that day, but had reportedly been upset about being disciplined earlier in the afternoon. What happened next would unfold within a span of just 20 minutes and would forever change 2 families. We always told our kids to stay together. We never imagined something like this between classmates. In the early 2000s, New York's public schools were beginning to confront bullying as a public safety issue, not just a disciplinary one. But resources were stretched thin, and communication between schools and families was inconsistent. That Tuesday afternoon, Emily never made it to her grandmother's door. Instead, a chain of decisions and failures would intersect with a child's anger and lead to an unthinkable outcome. Tuesday, May 17, 2005. School had ended only minutes earlier. Emily, clutching her purple backpack, walked down East 163rd Street on her usual route to her grandmother's apartment. The spring air carried the smell of roasted peanuts from a street vendor. It was a familiar, ordinary New York afternoon. At the same time, 10-year-old Marcus T. left the same building by a side exit. Earlier that day, Marcus had been reprimanded for pushing another student during recess. According to teachers, he left school angry, his fists clenched. Marcus had a lot of anger. He was bigger than other kids his age, and he didn't know how to handle frustration. We'd been trying to reach his mother for weeks about getting him into counseling. I saw the little girl with the purple bag walking by. A few minutes later, that older boy came by, looking upset. I didn't think anything of it. Kids pass by all the time. These brief, unconnected observations would later become critical puzzle pieces for investigators. In that park, under the budding leaves of early spring, 2 children whose paths had crossed many times before would meet one final time. According to later statements and forensic evidence, Marcus confronted Emily near the swings. Witnesses would recall hearing raised voices, a boy shouting, a girl crying. What began as a confrontation over a playground slight escalated quickly. When children are overwhelmed, especially those with poor impulse control, minor conflicts can spiral into aggression. Without an adult present, there's nothing to de-escalate. Minutes later, the park fell silent again. Emily lay injured, hidden behind a row of shrubs. Marcus fled toward the street. A passerby found Emily and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a little girl. She's hurt. In the park. Please send someone. We arrived within 3 minutes. She was unresponsive. EMS was right behind us. We started CPR immediately. Despite paramedics' efforts, Emily was pronounced dead at Lincoln Hospital less than an hour later. Local news footage shows reporters outside the park, microphones in hand, parents hugging their children. Word spread quickly. A 6-year-old had been killed only steps from her school. In a neighborhood already wrestling with youth violence, the story dominated headlines. It was like time stopped. Everyone was crying. We couldn't believe a child could do this to another child. News anchors speculate about gang involvement, stranger danger. The school issues a statement urging calm. But within hours, detectives began to suspect this was not the work of a stranger. Witness tips and security cameras from nearby bodegas pointed to a different, more disturbing possibility. By nightfall, investigators had a name. The suspect was not a stranger, not an adult predator, but another child, a boy Emily had known from school. By early evening on May 17th, the small park on East 163rd Street had become a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the swings. Detectives from the NYPD's Bronx Child Victims Unit arrived to take over the case. We treat every case involving a child with the highest priority. At first, of course, we had to consider every possibility: stranger abduction, gang initiation, a family dispute, but very quickly, witness tips started pointing us in one direction. Officers canvassed the area, knocking on doors, speaking to shopkeepers, parents at the playground. Several people reported seeing a boy about 10 years old following Emily across the street minutes before she disappeared. He was wearing a blue hoodie. I didn't think anything of it until the police came by later. Narrator overlays a map showing the movement of the boy from the school to the park. Investigators also gathered physical evidence from the park: a dropped lunch bag, footprints in soft soil, fibers on Emily's clothing. At the time, forensic analysis of juvenile cases was still relatively new, but the NYPD lab moved quickly. Even in a case involving children, we still process everything the same way: swabs, prints, DNA. We're looking for corroboration of witness accounts. Detectives turned to the school. Teachers confirmed that Emily had experienced repeated harassment from one older boy, Marcus T., and that he'd been disciplined earlier that day. His address, guardianship information, and disciplinary reports were handed over to the police. It's heartbreaking. We had noted some behavior issues, but we never imagined something like this. That same night, officers went to Marcus's home, a third-floor walk-up 2 blocks from the school. His mother let them in. Marcus was sitting on the couch, still wearing the blue hoodie witnesses had described. Because Marcus was 10 years old, juvenile interview protocols applied. Detectives asked him about his afternoon. His answers were inconsistent. With children this young, you have to be careful. They may not understand their rights or the gravity of what's happened, but the priority is safety, both theirs and the community's. The revelations stunned the neighborhood. Parents who had been warned about stranger danger were now confronted with a different reality: that a child could be both victim and perpetrator. We didn't know how to explain it to our kids. How do you tell them a classmate could do something like this? Marcus was taken for a psychological evaluation at a juvenile facility. Experts assessed his mental state, his history of behavioral problems, and whether he understood the consequences of his actions. We look at impulse control, trauma, exposure to violence. Children at this age can act out of rage without foreseeing the outcome. It doesn't excuse the act, but it shapes how the legal system responds. Within days, prosecutors faced a difficult question: how to handle a homicide committed by a 10-year-old. By the end of May 2005, the city's attention had shifted from the small park where Emily lost her life to the Bronx Family Court building. Prosecutors now faced a moral and legal dilemma. How do you respond to a homicide committed by a 10-year-old? In New York State at that time, children under 13 could not be tried in criminal court for murder. Proceedings were handled in family court, with a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. On June 2nd, the Bronx District Attorney's Office filed a juvenile delinquency petition against Marcus T., alleging acts equivalent to manslaughter and assault. Because of his age, the word murder never appeared on the charging documents. This is one of the reasons the case ignited controversy. Many in the public saw a murder and wanted a murder charge, but the law didn't allow it. The first hearing lasted less than an hour. Marcus appeared small and frightened in an oversized shirt. His mother wept quietly in the back row. It was heartbreaking. You had a dead child's photo on the courthouse steps and another child sitting inside accused of killing her. Over several sessions, the court heard from witnesses, classmates, a shopkeeper, and a park visitor who had called 911. Each described seeing Marcus follow Emily that day. I just saw him running. I never thought he could do something like that. Forensic analysts testified about fibers, fingerprints, and DNA that placed Marcus at the scene. His defense attorney did not dispute his presence but argued that the death had been an accident, a push gone wrong during a playground quarrel. Intent is key. At 10, you may not have the mental capacity to form the same intent as an adult. That's what the defense leaned on. Family court judges have a range of dispositions for juvenile cases, from community supervision to placement in a secure facility until the age of 18 or 21. The judge ordered a full psychological evaluation before making a decision. It's a balancing act. You want accountability, but you also don't want to throw away a child's future. Montage of news headlines. Is the law too soft on young killers? Talk radio debates. Vigils held outside the courthouse with candles and stuffed animals. Outside the courthouse, emotions ran high. Emily's family demanded justice. Some called for changes to state law. Others urged compassion, pointing to Marcus's troubled background and young age. We lost one child already. We can't lose another to the system. On September 14, 2005, Judge Rebecca Sandoval issued her decision. Marcus was adjudicated a juvenile delinquent for acts equivalent to first-degree manslaughter. He was ordered to serve time in a secure juvenile facility with mandatory therapy and schooling until at least his 18th birthday, subject to annual reviews. It was the harshest penalty available under family court, but it still left a path for rehabilitation. Emily's family expressed disappointment but vowed to push for stronger anti-bullying laws. Marcus's mother issued a tearful apology outside the courthouse, saying she hoped her son could one day make amends. The court's decision closed the legal chapter but opened a wider conversation about how to keep children safe, how to intervene earlier, and how to prevent playground conflicts from turning deadly. In the months after Emily's death and the court's decision, the Bronx neighborhood where she had lived looked the same on the surface. Children still played on stoops, parents still hurried home from work, but underneath was a deep sense of loss. We walk past that park every day. It's hard not to think about her. It changed how we watch our kids. PS 118 launched a comprehensive anti-bullying program in Emily's name. Teachers received new training, a full-time social worker was hired, and peer mentoring sessions were started to teach conflict resolution. We realized we couldn't dismiss kids being kids anymore. We had to intervene early and often. Emily's case also sparked debate in the city council. Within a year, new funding was allocated for school psychologists, and the Department of Education rolled out a citywide reporting system for aggressive behavior. It was one of those rare cases where a tragedy actually led to structural change. Schools got more support. Parents got more information. Emily's family established a small foundation to provide art supplies to underprivileged children, a way to honor her love of drawing. Each spring they host a memorial walk through the neighborhood to raise awareness about bullying. It doesn't bring her back, but it helps us feel like something good can come from something so terrible. Marcus spent the next several years in a secure juvenile facility. He attended therapy, continued his schooling, and participated in restorative justice programs designed for young offenders. He was still a child when this happened. The hope was always that with support he could grow into an adult who understood what he'd done and could live differently. At 18, Marcus petitioned for supervised release. The court considered his progress reports, his remorse, and the wishes of Emily's family before deciding. Emily's story became part of training videos for teachers, social workers, and police recruits. It stood as a stark reminder that bullying, if unaddressed, can escalate beyond words and shoves into irreversible harm. We learned that you can't wait for a tragedy. Intervention has to start the first time a child shows repeated aggression. In the end, 2 families and an entire community were forever changed. Emily Rivera's name now stands for vigilance, compassion, and the need to act before it's too late. Her story reminds us that the fight against bullying isn't just about discipline, it's about saving lives. If you or someone you know is experiencing bullying, speak up. Together we can make sure no child walks home in fear.